I see it on your screen. I see, yeah, the
There, did it
recording
come
has
up on
started.
yours?
Yeah, recording has
Yeah,
started now.
okay. All right, then I'm going to start it all over
All
again.
right, sounds good.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that because I really and truly don't want to go back and have to re-record this. Okay, so what we are going to do today is we are going to work on a website as a class. Now, I've been working on it myself over the weekend, all right? And of course, what I did, for lack of better verbiage, was to kind of screw it up. Not on purpose, but let me show you what it's supposed to look like, okay? So when we build it, we want it to look, well, oh, I lost my images. We want it to look, and let me bring the images back. Like this. Now, like I said, there's some problems with it. Over the weekend, I'm watching television, and I don't know if you've ever seen that commercial. I think his name is Walter Noel Flores, and it's like WKF. Well, for some reason, that gave me inspiration, good, bad, or indifferent, to create BAADG, and that's before and after dog groomers. All right, my dog is going in for a grooming tomorrow, which made me think of this. So we've got this. This is what we're going to be creating. All right, yes, there's text on it too, and it's this down here. All right, is I screwed it up so it doesn't look like it's done. But what I want to show you is we want to make this responsive. So in other words, as I go in here and I change the size of my screen, you can see here, and that's where it got goofed up. So I'll fix that for tomorrow. But you can see how the picture's changed. And you can see that indeed it is responsive. That's what we want to do. All right. So we're going to put in today, we're going to put in all of the HTML. Now, when we put this in, let me grab the line that's got the CSS, and I'm going to comment that line out. All right, so I just commented out the line that adds the CSS. Now, when I look at it, now it looks pretty bad. All right, and that's to be expected. All right, so you can see you actually got the after picture first and then the before picture. So what I sent everybody out this morning, and I kind of goofed up on my emails, but what I sent out to everybody this morning just a few minutes ago was an email that says first in class website. All right. And what I mentioned before, and we get a little blip starting the class up today, is I want to get you guys this product right here. And it's called, let's see, you can view but not make edits. Oh, great. All right, so it's not going to let me do anything. I've got a product that's called Balsamic Wireframe, and it allows you to create a picture, for lack of better words, of what your website should look like. All right, and I was going to start with that today, but since my trial has expired, all right, I'm not going to do it right now. It's no big thing one way or the other. You'll see it tomorrow. All right, so we've got this website that we're going to create. Let's just start creating it right now. So as always, I'm going to call it, you can call it whatever you want, but I've got this thing in here already that's called first in class website. There's a CSS file in there that's empty. There's image folders in there that have got the images that you saw before. And I just plucked these things off the internet yesterday. All right. And so you can see all of them in there. We've also got in here a JS folder with an empty JavaScript file. I'm actually going to tomorrow introduce you to a little JavaScript. Now, don't let that throw you, because this whole thing we're working on, you don't have to turn it in. This is to just get people in practice to the kind of thing that you would actually be doing if you were developing websites. All right, so we're going to actually go through a couple things tomorrow that we really haven't even talked about yet. That's totally fine. All right. And finally, again, we've got our index.html file. And as you can see, that file is empty as well. All right. So what I want to do is I want to come in here, as we always do. I'm going to right mouse click and do my git bash here. And when that comes up, I am going to do my git init, hit enter. There's my .git folder. All right. And there's nothing to add yet. I'm not worried about that, but I am going to come in here. And again, it's called First InClass website. And I want to make sure people have a copy of this if they want it. So I'm going to go out to my GitHub account. And create a new repository right now. Again, First InClass website says it's available. It's public now. And create the repo. All right, you've seen me do this countless times before. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to come into here, paste it in, double check by saying git remote -v, and that's good. Everything is set up now. That's exactly what I want to have happen. Now, I should mention to you, this is off topic a little bit, but I have had several, especially of my second year students, who don't like the way that I do Git. All right, they're like, you're making this so much harder than it has to be. And you know what? Maybe you're right. But there are different Git products that you can use. I'm not talking GitHub here. I'm talking Git. And I've got one student who uses a product called Git Desktop, all right, that he found on his own, downloaded for free, and uses that. And he claims it's much easier to use. All right. I've just never taken the time to learn another thing like that. But, there's absolutely nothing wrong if you want to go on your own and do that and find that out. I don't care, but I'm just going to keep using what I'm using. All right. Okay. So with all of that said, then let's get started. So let me bring this up inside of Visual Studio Code. All right. So as you can see, again, I've got an empty CSS file. There's nothing in there. I've got my images. Okay. And I did put them into their own folder. So this will be the image gallery. This is the one that's on the top. And underneath that, I have a thing I called intro. So you can see that that's in there as well. All right. There's a JS file that again is empty. And there is my index.html file, which again is empty. All right. So as the old saying goes, there's nothing up my sleeve. I'm basically just starting new here. All right. And by the time we finish tomorrow, hopefully there'll be quite a few things that you've learned that we not gone over in much depth or breadth of coverage, or that we did but kind of did quickly. All right. So I'm going to start putting in some HTML here. And as always, I'm just going to start it with an exclamation point and hit tab. Now, I should mention this is going to be a one-page site. All right. And there's different ways you can create websites. A lot of people have websites that are multiple pages. There are other people who have a one-page site that you might have to scroll through. And there's a way that you can create a one-page site where you can just jump from part of the page to part of the page. That's more or less what we're going to do. All right. The only other thing I want to say about what's on the screen right now, I'm about to change the title, of course. All right. But again, this may not mean anything to you right now, this line, but line 6 there with that meta tag in it, that is basically the reason that we are going to be able to continually create websites that are going to be responsive. Viewport is whatever you are using to view the web page. It doesn't matter, again, desktop, laptop, tablet, phone, it doesn't matter. We're telling it basically to scale and to use 100% of whatever medium we're using to look at the web page. All right, so I'm going to come in here and just call it what it is. So I call this First Class Website. Okay, now, right, I'm not going to, as we go through this, all right, I'll put in some code, we'll run it and take a look at it, etc. Okay. All right. So just starting up right now, I'm trying to take this thing and use the HTML5 semantic elements in here. What do I mean? Well, I'm going to have a header section in here. All right. Now, back in the day before HTML5, what people used to do instead of this, all right, what they used to do is they would do something like div ID equal header. So they were doing basically the same thing, but they didn't have a special, all right, and then finish the div, of course. Okay. But right now, that's not semantic. And what's semantic? Semantic basically means that it makes sense, not only to you, but to the browser. And we're letting it know, all right, this is our header section. Now, not to confuse you, but you can have multiple header sections on a page if you want to do that. All right. Typically, you have a header section at the top, like we're going to do right now. All right. But if I have a section, of a document, that each section, if we want to, could have its own header, could have its own footer, etc. You see that sometimes. All right. But with what we're doing right now, it's more simplistic. So we're not going to do that, at least not right now. All right. But what I do want to put in here is I want to put in a div that's going to hold everything. So I've got div class equal, and I just called it main header. All right, just like that. All right. And I'm going to put a bunch of stuff in there. Okay. So like what? I'm going to put another div in here, and I'm going to say class equal logo. All right. And for now, I just put it in, what do we call it again? Now I forgot. Before and after dog groomer. All right. So that's all we have in there for right now. Now, again, everybody, the way that everybody goes and codes this stuff is different. For instance, if this is only one line like this div is inside of one line. I put it all on one line. Other people like to take it and set it up like this. All right. Now, one thing is, if you do that, that's fine. But we have to spend a class period, not today, but soon, going over that there's a lot more extensions in here than the ones I've shown you thus far. One thing that I've got is autosave, and you'll notice when I do a file save, it goes back and it changes it back. All right. Now, some people like that, some people don't. And again, we'll talk about that, just not right now. All right. So we've got our logo, and then we're going to put in a nav section. All right. Again, typically nav is where you will put in an unordered list, which will hold all of your menu options. That's exactly what we want here. All right. An unordered list consists of list items. You already know that. For right now, I don't want them to go anywhere. So putting in a hashtag like that, all right, putting in a hashtag means just that. They're not going to go anywhere. And that's totally fine. All right, now I'm going to take this because we're going to have 4 pages in here. And when I say 4 pages, we're going to have 4 parts of the same page. All right, so we're going to have in here an about section. We're going to have a services section. And we're going to have a contact section. Now, when we go over this, and I don't know how far we'll get on this today, we may do it today, we may do it tomorrow. What I'm going to show you in that context section is we're going to create a very, very, very simplistic form. Now, we don't talk about forms in the chapter or in the book rather, for several chapters. But, what we've done so far, like on the test and the like, is on that contact page. If you remember, you just said contact me at, you put your name in there. I just want to show you something that's a little bit more reminiscent, so to speak, of exactly what you would really see on a quote real website, unquote. All right. So we've got all this, and I'm going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to run it by bringing up live server. And of course, it won't look like much right now. So you can see it right here. Okay, there's the logo, and here's this. Now the only thing right now, they're not going anywhere. So I don't get any error messages. All right, I don't get any errors because I put that pound sign there. But as you can see right now, not doing real much. All right, but what we've got in here so far, everything that we put in here by now, everything should make sense to anybody watching this lecture, be it live or on tape. So if you're live and you've got questions, I'm taking for granted you'll ask. And if you're watching this thing on tape, I'm taking for granted you'll email me or whatever if something doesn't make sense. All right. So that's the first thing. Okay. Then we come down to here. And I've got a header section. I'm going to put in 2 more sections right away. I'm going to put in a main section. There won't be anything in it for right now. And then after the main section, I'm going to put in a footer section. And there'll be nothing in there right now. I'm not going to run the program or run the file, but if I did, it wouldn't look any different. All we've done in here is put in 2 sets of tags, and there's nothing that goes along with either one of them. All right. All right. So as we go in here now, I'm going to give you some stuff, and a lot of the code that's in here is going to have a bunch of the CSS. Okay. So you're basically be making the calls to CSS, but our CSS file we won't create. So it won't do anything is what I'm telling you. All right. And again, the reason for that, and I apologize, is partway through here yesterday, I guess I proved I shouldn't be watching a football game and doing this at the same time. All right. Because I was watching the Dallas San Francisco game and I was getting quite animated and I accidentally removed something I didn't mean to remove and I couldn't get it back. So I've got to redo it today. All right. So in here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a section. So I'm going to say div class equals section. All right. Now I'm actually, as we get in here, I may have multiple sections. In fact, I will have multiple sections. So anytime I come into my CSS and I type in dot section like that, all right, then what I should know, okay, is that whatever I put in there, all sections are going to look like that. If I don't want to do that, I could have, if I have 3 sections, I could call them section 1, section 2, section 3, or something similar to that. All right. So what you're going to notice in here is I'm going to end up putting really about 3 more divs inside of this div. All right. I'm going to say here div. And here it's going to say class equal col-2. Now, what I'm trying to do here, okay, once we get done talking about HTML and CSS, so once we finish the book that we're in right now, okay, before we go into the other book, we're going to spend probably about 2 weeks going over a framework that's called Bootstrap. Don't worry about it. If you want to know anything about it, you can go out to getbootstrap.com. I'm not going to do that right now. But the point is, when you work inside of Bootstrap, you use classes up the wazoo, and these classes have built-in names like col, okay? Like, and we're not using it here, but like row, like container, etc. All right. So I'm slowly introducing some of the stuff in here that you're going to be seeing a little bit later on in the course. All right, so we've got this div in here with a class of col2. I'm going to put another div in here. I'm going to have a class that's going to be equal to what we're going to call box. And again, you don't have to worry about what this stuff is. Finally, we're going to have one more div, and the class is going to be equal to content. All right, and in here, we're going to put in our first image. Okay, now if I type in IMG and hit tab, notice what it does. This is that Emmet, that's that built-in thing. So it says, okay, this is your source. I've got an images folder. In that images folder, I've got a top folder. And in that top folder, I've got a file called BAADG01.jpg. Okay. And, I can put an alt in here. You always should do that. All right. So I'm going to put this over multiple lines just so you can see what I'm typing. So I'm going to say here alt equals. All right. And we'll just say grooming photo. All right. And then I'm also going to add a class in here. I'm going to say class equal main picture. All right. Now, I want to take a second and go over everything that's in here. All right. When I say everything that's in here, I mean everything that's in there in blue. All right. Remember, it's considered not only good practice, but necessary practice today that if you go in and you put in an image, that you not only have a source attribute in there, all right, but you also have an alt attribute in there. Now, we have talked about this before, all right, but I just want to say to you, with the alt, there are 2 times the alt image is really used. The first is if you get somebody who is either blind or legally blind and is using a screen reader, all right, it'll say grooming photo right there. If you're blind, having a beautiful image isn't going to mean very much to you. All right. The source, of course, is where the image lives. And we're letting it know that this image lives in the images folder, and there's a folder in there that's called top. And inside of there is that file. And again, I pulled all these off of the internet. All right. Finally, we're going to add a class to this, which we may or may not end up using, but either way, it's going to be fine. And it's got in there main picture. All right. Now, there's a lot of different things that you can do when you work with images. We're going to have a whole chapter later on in the text on images. All right. If I take what we have now and I do a save on it and I jump back into here, all right, you're going to notice, well, this is because I blew it up real big, but at 100%, that's now what this looks like. All right. So we've got our logo. All right. We've got our navigation area and we've got our main picture. Okay. So that's what's there so far. What I want to eventually have happen tomorrow is I want that logo to kind of be where it is, but maybe be over here a little bit further. And then I want the home, the about, the services, I want that stuff to go over here. And I want this to look nice and spread out, etc. All right. And then I want my screen, for lack of better words, to almost split into 2. And this is going to be on the first half. Then on the second half right here, all right, right there, all right, is we are going to come in and basically put some kind of a big heading in there, a title in there, etc., that kind of stuff. And then we'll have some other stuff down below here. All right. Like I said, as we walk through this, I just want to hopefully have it make sense to people as far as what we're doing. All right. So let's jump back into here. Okay, so we have we're inside of this section, and we have added this. All right. Well, I want to add one more thing in here. So I'm still inside of that section. In fact, I'm in the wrong part. Let me do it right. I want to be in, I want to make another one of these, for lack of better words. Why? Because I want a 2-column format, and I've only put in one of my columns. So I'm going to come down to here. Let's see. We're here. That goes all the way down to here. And I want this to make sense to you, that these two things go together. And it's not that they go together because they're lined up. They go together because they are together. What some people will do, you don't have to do this, is they'll come in here and they'll say, for example, start call -2. Then when they get down to the bottom, all right, and they're down to here, then they'll come in here and they'll say like end. The problem with doing that is I'm going to end up having comments interspersed all over the place in here. And after a while, it'll be kind of hard for you to read. And I don't want that. All right. That's why I'm not doing it. Now, some people, they're like, that's worth it. You know, you're wrong. It's worth doing that. Okay. If you feel that way, then you can do that. There's not a problem with it. All right. So I'm going to come down here and just copy the beginning of the same stuff that we just put in. So I'm going to have a second column down here, box and content, but this particular one that's in here, and I got to have both of my ending tags. All right. In here, I don't want this. In here, I don't want it to hold an image. All right. I want it to hold some text. Okay. So I'm going to come in here and say H1. All right. Then underneath that, I'm going to have an H2. All right. Then after that, I'm going to have a paragraph. Okay, and I put it on another line. You don't have to, but okay. So if you look at what we've done, let me save this and let me go back out here so you can see what we have. And again, I understand it doesn't look like much, but what we want again is we want the logo to be in here someplace. We want this, instead of being horizontal, we want that to be vertical and in here. This is okay. We want this text that you see right here bigger, and we want to push it into there. Now, one thing I want you to understand, you probably do already, but just to be sure, if I'm doing something special to just this H1, just this H2, just this paragraph, then I should come in and either give them a class name or an ID name. All right. So for instance, if I come in here and I say class equal, and let's just say I call it title text. All right. I'm making that name up. It has no significance. Then if I come back into here, into my CSS file, all right, and we'll add other stuff up here, but I'll just come down a little bit. And I'm going to put dot title text. All right. And I say here, font size 4 rem, for example, which is going to be pretty doggone big. So when I do a file save now, what's going to happen? Absolutely nothing. And absolutely nothing is going to happen because as of right now, I did not add in that style sheet. So I need my link tag in here. All right. And I need to say it's css/styles.css. Now, when I do a file save and I go back, you'll notice, hopefully you did, it's a heck of a lot bigger than it was. All right. And just to show you, I'm going to double the size and I'm going to make this one 8 and I'm going to make this one 4. All right. So that, and then I'm going to have another one, we'll call it subtitle text. And that'll have a font size. And we'll make that 4 rem. We'll make this one 8 rem. All right. And we'll come down and make one more, and we'll call this title paragraph text. And we'll make that a font size of 2 rem. All right. So we need subtitle text and title paragraph text. So let's put those in there. Oops. All right. Now when I do my file save and I go back to this, all right, it's all bigger than it was before. Maybe not a lot, all right, but it's bigger and it'll continue to get bigger. All right. So what we've done so far in here then, and let's see. Okay, okay. So what we've done so far when we take a quick look at this, all right, what we've done so far is we've come in and we created a logo and we created a navigation section. Under that navigation section, we created an image. All right, you just grabbed an image. And again, eventually that logo is going to be moved over a little. We'll change the color. All right. We'll take what's highlighted right here, and that'll be going horizontally across as opposed to vertically, up and down, it'll go across. We'll keep this here, but we'll have this right here, all this stuff will go over here. And this will each take up 50% of the screen. All right. So hopefully there's nothing that I've done so far that doesn't make sense. Okay. All right.
I have a quick question
Sure.
just to
Go ahead.
clarify something.
Go
So
ahead.
you made I'm trying to think of how to word this coherently, but on the H1 text, for instance, if you made
Okay.
an H1 tag in the CSS file and made edits to that, that would still apply to the title text, even if you have that specified as the title text class, right? Until you made something in the CSS folder that was specifically for title text. Does that make
Let me,
sense?
I think what you're saying is if we had an H1 here, is that correct?
Right. And then
So
you didn't have a title text in
if
the
we did an 8,
CSS.
okay, let's do that. So if I
Yeah.
come through there and I'll say font size 8 rem. All right. And then we'll take this and we'll comment the whole thing out. All right. And just so we can see it, let's change, we'll say color, just so it's a little different. We'll make it green.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's how I expected it to work.
Okay. And the one thing to realize, I mean, it's a good question, it really is, but I want people to understand is if we bring this back now, all right, and let's say that we came in here, and I'm not going to play with the font size, but let's change the color now. So let's come in here and say, we'll say color blue, and we'll say, I don't know, font family, and I'm just going to put in Arial here. All right. So if I go and click this now and I say save, all right, and I come back to here, it's blue, but I want you to understand why it's blue. All right, it's blue because of positioning in here. It's because this title text it comes after the H1. So if we came and took this and put that underneath, all right, like that, and hit File, Save, and we go back and we look at this again, all right, I'm surprised. I thought it was going to be green, but let's see if we can figure out why. All right, we've got, oh, I know why. Okay. CSS, Cascading Style Sheets, deals with specificity. So this says now all H1 tags are supposed to be 8 rem and green. Okay, this says that anything with a class of title text should be blue and should be that family. All right. And what I'm telling you is this using a class is more specific than using a type of CSS, I'm sorry, a type of HTML selector. This is more specific than this is. All right. And if that confuses you, okay, well, how can we fix that? Okay. We could come through here and say this. Okay. We could come through here and say H1 and then put in dot title text like that. All right. Now let's take a look at it. All right. And you'll notice, well, it got really kind of screwed up in here. It's very easy when you're playing with software like this. All right. I always say that, arguing with software, I've been married for many years. And I always say that arguing with software is like arguing with your spouse. It doesn't matter if you're right or not, you lose. And the software is taking precedence here. And when it's confused over what it is you're looking for, all right, it's like, well, we've got a title text here and we got a title text here. Since this technically is more specific, it's making it blue. And you'll see if I go back and make it red, for example, all right, and I save it and I come back to here, you'll notice it's red. All right. Since this is more specific, it did make it Arial, but it removed this. It didn't understand what was desired, for lack of better words there. All right. I don't know if I'm answering your question or or confusing you more, but as you go through this, we're going to write what I hope at least will be good CSS, the way that it really should be written. All I wanted to show you is the ways that we can come through here and change different things. That's all.
No,
All
thank you.
right.
That I understand the hierarchy better now.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. And we did talk a little bit about this before, but I do want to mention it again. And that is, as you go through here, okay, usually what ends up happening is near the top, people put in one of two things. Either they come in here and they say, for example, that universal selector, which means everything, and they put in padding 0 and they put in margin 0. That removes any padding, any margin that's on the entire document. So if I save this and I go back, it's going to look much more flush to the left than it did. All right. But now I've removed anything that gets put in by default, all right, by the browser itself. All right. The other thing that I could do, and we've talked about this a little bit, you saw it in your book, go out to that normalize file. All right. And that's under this nicolist.github.normalize. So I can go out there and I can download it. There it is. So if I do file, save as, all right, and I come back to my program here, there we are, and I go to CSS. Now I've got normalize.css. There it is. Now, if I'm going to use that, totally fine. But we've talked about this before. I'm going to say it again. And that is, you want to make sure that you do that one first. Right? And once we've done that and put in the normalize, okay, now we can go back in here and get rid of this, and it shouldn't look that different. All right, I don't remember everything normalize puts in, but There it is. All right. So normally when you start, all right, you're going to have some kind of thing at the beginning of your CSS file. What that is going to be totally, of course, up to you. Okay. All right. So again, we added it right here. I had shown you that Eric Meyer reset. That would again do very much the same thing. All right. Now I'm just going to show you something too. Don't worry if it makes absolutely no sense. We're going to put in something too that's going to look like, I think it's the universal selector. And I'm probably putting it in wrong, so don't worry about it. But the point is, we're going to end up using this thing called border box. And what that's going to do is every time you go in and you add padding and you add margin, all right, of course, you're making whatever it is you're adding padding and margin to bigger. All right. But putting that border box in there is going to help the system when it's figuring out how much space to allocate for something. All right. That's enough. I'll just leave it right there. Okay. So we're going down to here. You can see what we've done thus far. Again, not a whole heck of a lot. All right. But what I want to do is I want to come in here and we'll just start this and then we'll take a break. All right. But I want to come in here. And again, sometimes people will do this. This is a section. So when you get down to the bottom of that section, they'll hit enter a couple times and put spaces. How you do that is totally up to you. All right. I tell this story and I'll make it very short and sweet that when I got my first professional programming job, the first day that I was there, now this was many years ago. So, rather than having a lot of stuff online, I was given a manual that was, let's just say it was well over 1,000 pages, was placed on my desk. And I was told, this is how we code here. Start looking through it. So me being kind of the wiseacre I said, that's it. And the guy said, no, when you're ready for it, I'll give you volumes 2 and 3. And he wasn't kidding. But what I'm getting to is when I was programming, there was a way they wanted you to do everything. Right now, I want you to develop your own style. All right. And developing your own style, all right, and it shouldn't be anything wild or anything, but as far as how you document things, how you lay things out on a page, etc. That's one thing that could at least potentially help you gain a job. All right. So what we're going to put in here next is we're going to add 4 different pictures. And all I'm going to do, because it is 8:58, I'm going to make another div in here. And again, I'm going to say class equals section, just like we did up above. All right. Now, again, I keep hammering home the same points, but it's important. We would not want to make this an ID. You can only have one ID per page. All right. Since you can only have one ID per page and we want more than one of these, you don't make it an ID, you make it a class. All right. And this is one thing you're going to have to understand because when you take your test later this week, there's 4, 5, and 6. All right. There'll be a little bit of work with IDs and classes in there. Again, you'll also see them on the pretest that we'll take. All right. I've got 8:59, which is close enough to 9 o'clock. So let's come back, please, at 10 after 9. I'm going to go get myself a water and I'll be back in just a couple moments. All right, it is 9:10, so I'm going to continue on. In this next section here, I'm going to want to put in 4 images, and I want it to go across. But again, eventually, when the screen size is small enough, I want it to shrink down so that it's just one picture per column. All right. So the first thing that I did, I've got another div in here, and I gave it a class. So I said class equal container, okay, which is a very common name to use. Okay. So now I want to say div class equal card. And again, card is, for lack of better words, it's pretty much a made up name. But what you're going to notice when we go through these tomorrow is every one of these is going to at least kind of look like a card. All right. And if you say, I don't know what you mean, well, then you're going to have to just hold on till tomorrow, but you will see it at that time. All right. So in there, I'm going to put in another image. And this is going to be under images, intro. And this is section 2.1. Probably didn't use the best names. All right. And we'll just call this dog number 1. Doesn't really matter that much what we call it. All right. And underneath that, I put in a P tag that says we are meticulous. All right. Now I want to show you something, and hopefully what I'm about to show you will at least make some sense. So I'm going to say file, save, and I'm going to jump back into here. And we now have this. All right. And it's kind of hard to see, but that we are meticulous is right here. Now, we're going to have 4 of these in just a minute. But what I want you to understand out of this is sometimes the reason that you use a div is now this is basically considered a single unit. So card is a single unit. Why is that important? Because I'm going to have 4 of these. All right. In fact, let me just go in and grab this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I've got 4 of them. I'm going to change this. So this will be 2 and a 2 and 3 and 3. And then finally 4 and 4. And I put a little bit something different under each one. First one, we are meticulous. Second one, we are careful. The third one said, we miss nothing. And the last one says, how many did I put here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there's 1. We are meticulous. Number 2, that should have been we are careful. Number 3, we miss nothing. And number 4, we love your pups. All right, so now I've got that in there. And I save, and I again go back. And now you see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pictures in here. I did scale these. They all were like 275 by 183, I believe. And when I changed that 275, which is the width, it's always width by height. So when I changed that to 600, I wanted these to be about 600 by 400. So it automatically, when it scaled, made them all 600 by 399, which was pretty close. All right. Okay. So we've got that in there now. All right. And, this is probably, it's a little image heavy, to be honest with you. This site probably wouldn't really have that many images in it because now we're about to put in a bunch more, but still it'll be just fine. Okay, as we get going. But again, this is going to end up being, these were all Cal4s. All right, so when we do this tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to set the width for a Cal4 to be 25%. All right, and what that'll do is it'll put 4 across, which is what we want to have happen. All right. Now that's the good news. The bad news is what happens when your screen size shrinks. If you watch this, for example, on a phone, you wouldn't want that. Okay. So what you're going to learn about tomorrow, and it's something that is discussed in your book, but you're going to see it because I wanted to be able to demonstrate it to you, is something that's called media queries. And with media queries, what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to change the appearance on screen based on the width of our browser window. All right. So again, as we shrink it down right now, as we shrink this down, you might say, well, that's not bad. And maybe it isn't terrible, but look at this. See how we've got to move over? You never, ever want a user to have to be able to scroll to the right. Scrolling up and down isn't bad. All right. And again, this one's far from perfect. All right. That's not bad. But, scrolling basically from left to right, it is bad because most users aren't used to doing that. So they don't do it. All right. Okay. So let's go on here. And now we finished our second section. Okay. So now what we want, so we've got our start of column 2 there. We can have our end of column 2. Which I believe is right here. Whoops. Like that. So that'll be the end of column 2. Now, the next one that we make, we want it to be 4 columns. And you might say to yourself, that's all fine. Why are you doing all this stuff with columns? Because you see that a lot in a website, in many websites, maybe not everyone, but go out to your favorite website and see what kind of a format they have. If they have a 2-column format, the chances are pretty good it won't be 2 columns for the entire page. All right. And that's why we had a 2-column at the top. And now we just did a 4-column, and now we're going to do a 3-column. All right. And again, it hopefully will make a lot more sense when we start going through this tomorrow and adding the CSS to it. All right. So I'm going to make another div in here with a class, again, is going to be equal to section. All right. And then in here, I'll have another div with another class, and that's going to be equal to container. Now, just so you know, and did I follow great, do a great job in here? Instead of saying div class equals section, okay, we didn't really have to do that. I could have just come in here and probably would have been cleaner to have come in here and done this section like that. And then down at the very bottom here, change that to section. Why am I even taking the time to tell you this? Because really, the recommendation is that when you are creating sites today, that you try to take them and you try to make them HTML5 compliant, which is what I'm doing there. All right. It would work either way. And that's what I'm telling you. I mean, regardless of the way that I did it. Okay. It'll work either way. But this is considered what I'm doing here. That's considered to be cleaner. All right. So we've got our div class equal container here. All right. Then up at the top, I'm going to just put another div, and that div is going to have inside of it an H2. This is going to be our gallery, our photo gallery, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to say gallery, see our satisfied customers. All right. And that's going to be a heading basically that we're putting in here. And now we're going to have another div, and we're going to say class equals col, again, col -3. All right. And inside of here, I don't know how I did that, but I put a period there. I guess I had my fingers on the wrong place. All right. So in here, we're going to again have another image. And you see there's 9 of them. And we'll put in here for a sort or an alt equal, we'll say, again, now this one will say puppy number 1. All right, maybe not great, but that'll work. All right. And what I want to do is I want there to be 9 of these. So look, if you look quickly in here, if I do a save and come back to it again, okay, there's the one that we just put in. And you can see it's a little bit smaller. All right. Again, I changed that where this is 600 by something. This is 500 by something. All right. So it's 100 pixels less as far as the width goes. All right. And now I'm going to come back in here. And because I want this right there, that, I'm going to put in 9 of these. All right. So this will be puppy 2, 3, etc. All right. So now I've got that in there. When I save again, and I come up and I bring it. So there was the one we just saw, and here will be the other ones. Okay. It's actually coming together, and it's probably bigger, probably better than you really think it is, because there's not going to be that much CSS that we're going to have to put in here to pretty this up quite a bit. All right. But now it just looks, as you can see, everything's pushed over to the left. Now, when we work on this tomorrow, for example, we'll want this to be on the left. You know, we will hopefully at least end up doing some floating so I can show you what floats are all about. Okay. Let's jump back into here then. All right. And we just finished a section, so let's start another section. Okay. And in here, okay, we're going to have another container. Now notice if I type in here div and I type container and hit tab. Well, I thought it would do that. I think div dot container and hit tab. There we go. In fact, I just needed to put in dot container. So dot for class, container, and hit tab. And you can see what it put in for me. These are just all Emmet shortcuts. You can go out and there's a lot of, there's a lot of good videos and a lot of good things that have all the different shortcuts. I probably don't nearly take advantage of them the way I should. Okay, so we're going to put in another div here, and we're going to put in H2 in here, and it's just going to say about. All right, and we're going to have another div in here, and it's going to have a class equal, we did this one before, but we're doing it again, col -2, and another div in here with a class equal box. One of the reasons I'm going back and redoing this is I think I might have gone too nuts over with the divs in here. So div class equal content. All right. Now, I may have mentioned this before to you. I may not have. I don't know. But if I go out here and I Google, or so I look in here for, and I type in Lipsum, okay, and I hit enter. There is lipsum.com. There's a lipsum.io. There's a lipsum.io generator. There's a bunch of these. All right. I'm going to go out to the lipsum, loremipsum.io. It says it's a generator. Okay. and it says there's placeholder text in there. So if I go in there and I say, now it's going to give me 5, how many paragraphs do you want? So I'm going to come in here and say 3 paragraphs, generate. And you'll notice that it gave me 3 paragraphs. This is just called dummy text or filler text. Now, I thought, well, I'll be cool or cute or whatever you want to call it here. And I put in here dog lorem ipsum. As you can see, I searched for that. And there's doggo ipsum. What's kind of neat about it is at least the stuff that's in here, all right, at least the stuff that's in here is related to dogs, wagging tail, etc. All right. All right. So I'm going to grab these 3 paragraphs. I'm going to copy them to the clipboard. I'm going to put all of them in here. Now, it's going to look really bad right now. There's no form or substance to them. So I'm going to put a P tag in here. I think I've done this for you before. And put my ending P tag here. And we'll put another ending P tag after this one. Try it at least. And another ending P tag after that one. That's fine. And then get a beginning one and put a beginning one here. And of course, it automatically puts in an end one and put in another beginning one here. All right. And again, if I come in and say view and go to word wrap, it'll make them look nicer. Okay, this one didn't move over. The first one did. There's one moved over, and here's the other one. There. All right, so now I've got my first of my 2 columns. So that'll be a file save. And when I go back and look at this, again, it's not going to look good, and that's okay. But you can see underneath here, I've got a boatload of text. All right, that'll be our about. Okay, now, with some people, when they do this and they have a 2-column format, they like both columns to look identical to one another. That should be equals. They like them to be identical to one another. All right, and you can do that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. Nothing. It's totally fine. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here. And think that if I put another 3 in here and hit enter, it actually, believe it or not, I think it gave me different paragraphs. All right. So I could either do that again for now, just to save a little bit of time. I'm going to grab everything that we have in here, everything. And you can go change this on your own if you want to do that. But I'm going to go down to where I've got the div col equal to. I'm going to go all the way down to where that div ends. I think that was here. I think second last one. Is that correct? 1, 2. Yes. So I'm going to copy that to the clipboard, come down here, hit enter, and type it in again. All right. Now it could have gotten goofed up in here. I don't think it did, but it's possible that it did. And come back and look at it one more time. All right. And not in here. Look at this one more time. And again, you'll notice now I've got 1, 2, 3 paragraphs and 1, 2, 3 paragraphs. All right. What we'll want to have happen tomorrow is we'll want our screen to split in 2 right there. The word about will be put right in the middle. And these 3 paragraphs will be on this half. And then the next 3 paragraphs will be on this half. And we'll also stagger it so that when we come in and we collapse our screen size, all right, each paragraph will just basically take up, so it'll be formatted so that it'll look nice across the screen. Let's just put it that way. All right. Now, what we want to do in here next is going to be totally brand new. I'm just telling you right now, it's going to be totally brand new. I want to show you something that is going to allow us to see what we're going to cover in several chapters from now. And you might say, well, that's fine, but if it's not for several chapters, why are you showing it to us now? All right, I'll say because I can. I don't know, but I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do this. All right, create another section, and in here we're going to create what's called a form. All right, and forms go within form tags. There's a lot of other stuff that you typically put in here. So I'll put in here method equal post and action equal nothing. And if you say, what is that? I'm going to explain it to you in just a moment. All right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, let's see, name, email, and message. Okay. It probably won't look pretty because it's not formatted at all. This I didn't do on mine. So I'm doing this literally all off the top of my head. So label or equals name, input type equals text, name equal name, ID equal name. All right, we'll put it, for now at least, we'll just put a couple line breaks in there. All right, and I'm going to put another one of these. And this one will say email. And let's see, this will say email. And this will say email. Let's take a look at what we've done so far, just so you can see what it looks like. All right. So we now have this. Very hard to see. It's down at the bottom of the page, but it's right here, name and email. All right. So let's put in one more, but it's going to look a little bit different. And I'll show you why in just a second. All right, this one is going to say message. And this is going to look a lot different here. This is going to say text area. Name equal ID equal, that's fine. Rows equal 10, I don't know, I'm making this up. Calls equal 25, 5. All right, and we'll want that to say message. Now, just because I want you to be able to see what we just did, and it was kind of hard, all right, I'm going to put a bunch of line breaks in here. So I'm going to literally put this in here. All right, just so you can see it. All right, and then finally, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, submit. And we'll say submit. And there is no ending tag there. All right, let's see what we've done. All right, and I goof that up, but that's fine. You can at least start to see here, and I don't need the word submit, so I'll get rid of that. And this got screwed up. So we'll fix it in just a moment. I know what the problem is already. But this is a label. That's called a text box, so I can type in there. That's another label. That's another text box. And that's a submit button. Now, don't worry, it says page isn't working. I'll explain why all of this stuff in just a second. So let's first fix this. So this has got here, let's see, this should say text area, and somehow I lost that. All right. And then at the bottom, we need an ending text area tag. Oh, we've got one. All right. This, we don't need the word submit. Let's see if I fixed it up good enough to show you or not. All right, so there's what we've got. Now, this is a form. Again, it's totally not formatted. All right. And since, again, we did that thing with normalize, it's pushed all the way over. So we'll fix this tomorrow. But now I can come in here and, give my name, my email, and some kind of a message. Okay. So what is all this stuff? These two things are referred to as actually these three. These are labels, headings, whatever you want to call them, but they're referred to as labels. This is a text input, so it's a box that's designed to hold text. So is this. All right. Now, just so you see it, if I come back to here again, notice for the second one I said type equal text. I'm going to change this to type equals email. Okay. And again, you're going to get all this stuff. I'm going to save this for you at the end of the period. But if I come back here now and look at what I just did, so I think I saved it, but file, save, and I come back here to where I just was, and I come in here and I put in Jeff, Scott. Now I'm just going to put in here hello, and I'm going to click submit. You'll notice I get an error. There is a minimum of built-in validation for forms in HTML5. It says you didn't put an @ sign in there. Hello is missing an @ sign. So what if I just put in an @ sign? Did nothing else. Well, it says please enter the part following that. It's incomplete. So what if I said hello at goodbye and tried it again? Now it doesn't matter. It's okay with it. All right. Typically, there's a lot more that you can do here than what we just did, just so you know. But what I want to get across to you, I just want to explain everything that's in here. We'll take this tomorrow and we'll pretty it up quite a bit. So taking it from the top, the first line in line 140 says form, method equal post, action equals double quote, double quote. All right. 99.99999 times out of 100, what you're going to put in there, and what you see in blue, is either going to be the word get or the word post. Now, we could have just as easily put get right there. In fact, let's change it for now. Let's change it to get. All right. And I'm going to do a file, save all. Okay. I'm going to come back to here. Where we just were, try to bring that back again. What's going on? But we'll fix it right now. So let's just bring up live server again. There we go. Okay. And when I come down to here, all right, I'll just put in, there it is. Now we've got all that. Put in Rankin. Okay. And, just put in some garbage here. All right. When I click submit, you may or may not be able to tell, but if you look up into my address bar at the top, it has in there 127.0.0.1:5500. First of all, what the heck is that? 127.0.0.1 is known as a loopback address. It's your computer. So it says we're on your computer. 5500 is the port that is being used to run this. And basically, you've got somewhere, from what I've heard, around 10,000 ports. Every time you go to run some software, that software runs on a certain port. The port that's being used for this one is port 5500. All right. Then it has in here index.html. Okay, that's the name of this file. And then it's got question mark. All right, in fact, let me grab every bit of this here and I'll put it down below it so you can see it. All right, I'll put it in here and do it like that. Make it somewhat bigger. Yeah, that's big enough. Okay, so it says I'm using HTTP as opposed to HTTPS. All right, we'll worry about that in another class. But that says this is our machine. That's known as the IP, or the Internet Protocol. Technically, that's not the IP address, but it says it's called a loopback address, and it says we're using our machine. Our machine is running on this port. The name of the file that it's running is right here. Then you see a question mark. All right. That question mark, what comes after this? What comes after that question mark? Again, that's all this. I know you know that. That's known as a query string. And it says we've got something called name, and it's equal to Jeff Scott. We've got something called email, and it's equal to JP Scott at rankin.edu, and that @ sign is represented with a %40, and we've got a message. All right. So basically, that's the content. Why did I even take the time to show you that? Well, notice you saw that's all in here. Okay. If I go back and I come in and I change that from what we just had, which is get, if I change, come on, if I change that to post and I save it, and I go back to right where we just were, all right, and I come back in here and do the same kind of thing we just did. So again, I'll come in here with my name. All right, and that's fine. I'll just grab some junk in here. Now, when I press submit, you'll notice that technically, even though it's showing it in here, what's going to happen when you do a post, all right, what is going to happen when you do a post is, rather than showing that information, as you saw right here, rather than show that information, all right, up on the screen in the address bar, it hides it. Why is that important? Well, if you had credit card numbers, passwords, anything that was vital information, you wouldn't want to be sharing that. You wouldn't want to be sharing that with other people. I mean, that should just make sense, right? Okay. So we've got this form in here, and we're telling it we don't want it to do anything. Normally, we would put in something like this. And there would be a file that we would create that would handle it. We're not there yet. In fact, we don't, this whole first semester, we don't go through this stuff in this class. We go through that in a later class. Then we've got the label where it says for equals name. This is a relatively new type of thing, but what that does is in here, all right, if I go and take my mouse and click on the label, it puts it inside of the, all right, well, I don't know why it's not doing that, but it's supposed to put it inside of that particular box. All right. When you say for equals, you don't ever have to say that. Oh, that's why, because I've got name here. I don't have email. All right. And this does say message. So this is the heading, so to speak. Headings are labels. All right. This is going to be just an input box. Now you'll notice in there, it's got a type, and the type is text, which basically means we can put anything in the world that we want to put into that box. Anything. Doesn't matter what it is. All right. We can put numbers, we can put letters, we can put anything we want. All right. The name of this input box is name. The ID of this of this input box is name. And you might say, well, how can you do that? How can you name two things the same thing? Typically, when you are working with a form like this, not always, but almost always, the name and the ID will be the same. With what we're doing this semester, all right, this semester in the AWD1000 class that you're in right now, technically, we don't even need this property right here. Okay, we don't even need that. But if you noticed on here, we've got ID equal name. Well, you've seen that word ID before. You've seen that word ID when we've come in and we've talked about CSS, ID in classes. So you typically use the ID property, all right, when you are creating forms on the client side, which is what we're doing right now. All right. Then on the next thing, on these two lines here, on 144 and 145, we've got here another thing. But notice here, the type is not equal to text anymore. It's equal to email. That was why when we put that in and we didn't put in an @ sign, etc., we were getting the errors. That is some built-in HTML5 validation. All right, it's validating, not it doesn't go in there and look and say, is that somebody's real email address? No, it just comes back in and says, was it formatted in a way that it should be? That's it. There's more that you can do on that. We'll talk about that in a later class. Then you'll notice in the next three lines down here, we're really the next two lines, these two, this is not an input type equal text or an input type equal email. This is a text area. All right. Maybe you've done this before. I remember when I moved here several years ago that I went and found myself a new dentist. All right. And they asked me to fill out a bunch of stuff. And when I was filling it out, the form didn't exactly look like this, but it'd have a thing for name and email, etc. Then over here, it might have had something like hobbies. All right. And why would it do that? Well, maybe at a regular doctor's office, the doctor would want to know if you are a paraglider or you do something where you might put yourself at risk. All right. Or maybe, I'm not, but if I was a boxer, professional boxer, they might want to know that at a dentist's office, for example, because I might be a regular customer then. That kind of an idea. And when we do this, we use a text area. You'll notice for this input, if you look right here, input tags do not have a closing tag. There's no closing tag there. There's no /input for this one or for this one. Labels do have a closing tag. Inputs do not. But this, since it's bigger, it's called a text area. Now notice I'm going to triple this. So I'm going to put here 30, all right, for rows. I'm going to put here 75 for columns. And I'm going to save it. Hopefully you got to look at it the way it looked before, because now it's a lot bigger. So I can make that any size I want to make it. When we do this tomorrow, we'll line this stuff up, etc. We'll put a color behind it. We'll do a few other things just so it looks nicer. All right. All right. There's two more things that I want to show you. 2 or 3. So I'm going to go back into here. Let's see. Right there. Now, earlier, so we've got this section where we just put in a form. All right. And I added all these blank lines. We might put in another section. I don't know if we're going to or not, but okay, let's come in here and let's put in a footer. You've seen footers before. There's nothing new here, but we're going to put something in here that is new. All right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say created by, you could put your own name there, of course, Jeff Scott, ampersand, copyright, all rights reserved. Not a very big footer for right now, but it's totally fine. So I'm going to save this and go back and look at it again. And you can see it down here at the bottom. Created by Jeff Scott. Well, I guess I spelled copyright wrong, but it's because it's ampersand copy, not copyright. So there's my ampersand. or my copyright symbol and all rights reserved. So let's change that so it's correct. So that should be ampersand copy. I think that's correct. So file, save all. And again, just so we can see it, let's come in here and put a whole bunch of BR tags in here. That should be enough, I would think. All right. So there it is, created by Jeff Scott. There's the ampersand, all rights reserved. Now, we will talk about this in another class, but it is getting to be more and more important that when you create something that will be out on the internet that other people can see, put a copyright symbol in there and put in all rights reserved. Because if someone were to go out and basically steal your website, there have been court cases on this. People basically have gotten where they've sued other people, etc. And this typically will hold up in here to say that that's your property. All right, there's more to it than that. You can put in legal things in here, but at a minimum, you should always put in something like that. All right. All right. Now, there was one or two more things I wanted to do, and one of them, because I always forget how to do this, so I'm going to type in here. And of course, I probably won't be able to find the one that I want, but I want to put in something that's just not going to overwhelm people right now. Yeah, we'll use this. All right. Probably not going to make a lot of sense to you, but I want you to get an initial exposure to a few things. All right, that's my goal here. So I'm going to paste this in. I'm going to get rid of this right here. All right. Now let's take a quick look at this and see if we can figure out at all what's going on in here. All right. This is going to figure out, as you probably guessed, the current date. All right. We can format this in a lot of different ways, but it'll probably pretty much be formatted as 1/23/2003. This will do the same thing, but with the current time. Okay. Then this right here, I'm going to just put this over 2 lines so I want you to be able to see it. All right. Says, give me the current date followed by a hyphen followed by the current time. All right. Don't worry about the ticks. We're going to go over all that stuff, but just not right now. And this is saying we want to call this function that's called call date. We want to call it every second. We want to call it every second. So what does that mean? Let me do a file, save all here. And I missed a piece, so I want to grab that piece back again. So I'm going to do this. And I'm going to put this into my footer right here. So I've got all rights reserved. I'm going to put in here, come on, a BR tag, hit enter, and I'm going to paste that in. ID = watch. Now, right now, if I do this, absolutely nothing is going to happen. You won't see it at all. And the reason that you won't see it is just like we had to go in, and earlier we had to go in and we had to add our, we had to add our CSS tag. Okay. We also have to go in and add our JavaScript. All right. You do it a little differently. You type in src. I'm sorry. You type in script. Okay. And then src, your source, equals, JS / and there it is, script.js, and then you need an ending script tag. Okay. We're going to also put a word in here, and we're going to go over all this stuff a lot later, but I'm going to put the word defer in there. And let's see what this did, if anything. So I'm going to save, and I'm going to go back into here. And if you notice here, now we've got the date and the running time. And you'll notice if I'll just leave it up there for a second, it'll automatically pop or propagate, whatever you want to call it. When it gets to 60 seconds, it'll go change to 9:56:01. But really, that's pretty cool. That's 4 or 5 lines of code, and you can put something like that in there. So this is the first time really that what we've looked at in here is we've actually come in and we put in some interactivity into this. All right. At least to my knowledge, it's the first time that we've done this. All right. And there's a lot of other things that you can do with JavaScript, of course. And we're going to look at many of them. All right. There was one more thing that I didn't show you that I do want to show you. And that is going back in here. And you'll notice we're already up at what? Closer to 200 lines. Okay. So we gave a paragraph here, and we gave that paragraph an ID that was called watch. Why did we give it something called watch? Because in here, we told it, we said, hey, right here, this is going to be either the most fun that you're going to have with JavaScript or one of the things you're going to hate the most about JavaScript. All right. We are manipulating right here what's called the DOM, or the document object model. And we're telling it, we want you to find, so get element by ID, watch, and you already saw that in our HTML file. And what we want you to do is we want you to write in there the date, a hyphen, and the time. And that's exactly what you saw happening. All right. And then again, I think I mentioned this before, but I'm going to say it again. This is saying, hey, set an interval. So every 1,000 milliseconds, which means every second, call date time, which is this. So call it, wait a second, call it again, wait a second, call it again, etc. All right. So again, what you have seen in this particular example that we're going over right now, we didn't go over much as far as CSS goes. Again, we'll do that tomorrow. But what you've really started to see in here is how to basically sit there and really develop a website. So when I finish today, I'm going to go and I'm going to notify these people from Balsamiq, and I'm going to say, hey, can we get the, basically use your product again? Hopefully they've always done a good job of getting back to me. If they say, no, we don't do that anymore, then they might say, you can just download it for free and I'll use that particular address. We'll look at that tomorrow. I will create a wireframe for this. And again, a wireframe is just a very, very, very crude picture of what you want the site to look like. All right. You typically do that. You don't do it after you've created the site like we're going to do. You typically do it beforehand. This is the kind of thing that you could show to a prospective customer and say, hey, this is kind of what I was thinking about. All right. Now, literally, these wireframes back in the olden days, not that many years ago, were written on a piece of paper, even sometimes on a napkin. All right. But we will write one, and then we'll pretend that we already did that, and then we're building the site based off of what the wireframe looks like. So, all right, I'm wrapping this up if you haven't figured it out. Tomorrow we'll do that first thing. If they don't get back to me, if they don't, then I'll just find a free Balsamiq markup out there and just download that one. So when we start, I will create that. When we get done with that, I will start adding the CSS in here. All right. And I'm going to work on the CSS as soon as I get done today, because right now it looks pretty bad. All right. We'll try to pretty it up and we'll go over this line by line. All right. So remember your work now. I'm going to bring this back up. All right. So your work, we've gone through and we did the one shape up 3. Okay. Your work for this week is you'll do shape up 4. And as you can see, there's different colors here on your URLs. And tomorrow I'll try to remember to give you these actual URLs so you have them. All right. Some people went to Google. Some people just went nowhere on those. Some people didn't even make them links. But you can see we've got a shadow in here as well. All right. Then we'll go into chapter 5. And you'll notice now we've got a gradient in here. All right. And we've got some coloring on the bottom. This is centered on the bottom, etc. Not many specs in here when you look at them. Then chapter 6. And you'll notice using 2 and 3 column layouts. All right. So this is a 2 column layout right here. All right. And then for the Halloween, very similar. We already did the chapter 3 as a class. So chapter 4, again, you can see there's some in there. There are some shadows. There's a big W on here. The color of these is different. This is centered. I don't care if you put Ben Murock there, if you put 2023 with your name, whatever you want to do. You'd probably rather have you do that, but do what you want to do. Column 5, again, there's a gradient in here. There's a background in here that you can see, another gradient here. And a 2 column layout for chapter 6. I do want to just mention, though, this is the last thing, but I do want to mention that when you are doing this, I don't want you to do all 4 assignments, or I guess 3 assignments for 4, 5, and 6 in the same folder. I want there to be a chapter 4 folder, and I showed you this the other day. Take what we did in chapter 3, copy it to a new folder called chapter 4, and make the changes to it. Then when you get done with that, take the chapter 4 folder, copy it to a chapter 5 folder, make the changes in that, then do the same thing with chapter 6. All right. So hopefully that all made sense. So you'll have to do these 2 things. All right. And as always, you will be doing the written tests for chapter 4, the written test for chapter 5, and the written test for chapter 6. So just so there's no confusion, I'm going to come out here. So we have now gone through chapters 1 to 7, but your next test will be just on chapters 4, 5, and 6. I guess I can't do that. All right. So how to use CSS to format, how to use the box model, and how to use CSS for page layout. And I can guarantee you there'll be stuff on that test with IDs. There'll be stuff in there with classes. There'll be stuff in there with borders. There'll be stuff in there with margin. There'll be stuff in there with padding. And you will be asked to, at least if we use the same site that we were using for the last one, all right, 1 or more of those pages are going to be either a 2 or a 3 column layout. All right. Then probably what's going to happen is, okay, as I mentioned, so that'll be, Wednesday, we will do a pretest. Thursday will be the test again on 4, 5, and 6. We've already done chapter 7. So Friday, I will go into chapter 8 in a lot of detail. All right. And then next week, we will go over 9 and 10. And you can see we're making pretty good headway because that says after next week, we'll be more than halfway through this book. All right. We may go through all this stuff in here and have just one test there and have no test here. I don't know exactly how we're going to do that yet. All right. So, Brant, I think you're the only one still on. Do you have any questions on anything we've done today or anything I explained afterward?
Not right now. It's the stuff looking ahead is still a little
Yeah.
unclear, but I'm not worried about that.
Okay. All right. Then, like I said, you've got some time to at least start looking at the stuff today, and probably tomorrow it'll work the same way. All right. And that will probably be done tomorrow between 10 and 10:30 would be my guess. All right. Until then, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day.
All right, thanks. You too.
Thanks.